scheduled official action meeting when we will vote on matters which have been discussed in previous meetings. The meeting is being videotaped for community cable channels. Individuals attending this meeting and intending to speak to the board should be aware that they are being videotaped. In order to meet the requirements of Pennsylvania Sunshine Law, it is necessary to record the names of all citizens who speak to the board during the meeting. To assure compliance with this requirement, it's essential that those planning to address the board come to the microphone and state their name and address. Members of the audience are asked to limit their questions and comments to no more than 3 minutes. This limit will permit time for all of those who wish to speak to the board. Whenever members of the audience exceed this time limit, the board president may ask the individual to yield the microphone to the next speaker. I ask that you turn to the next page on your agenda. Before we begin the agenda, I'd like to comment that as board president, I'm going to take the liberty to adjust the agenda. And what I'm going to do is, under personnel, item H, I'm going to move personnel to follow the Merck Science Partnership. So item L, personnel, will appear right before, excuse me. I want to make sure I have this right. It will appear right after other assignments, right after other I, right before the audience of citizens. Everybody clear on that? Be clear? That's what we're going to do. We're going to move H. That's not an I, that's an L. I'm sorry. H will come after L.
We'll rearrange out for that.
Yeah, we'll rearrange out.
Well, can't we do that after we come back from the executive session? Because we, okay, so tell me again what I'm going to say.
Okay. Under advisement from our solicitor, I will inform you that under personnel, I will be adding an item. It has to do with the contract, and that's what we'll be talking about later. Is that good enough?
Do I have to speak specifically?
The specific contract will be the position of Director of Personnel. Okay, you all right? Thanks. Okay, saying that, we'll come back and we'll start. I'll ask for a recommendation for approval of the minutes of the 710th meeting held on 12/21/95 as circulated. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Mosey.
Mr. Clemens, I'd be willing to second that motion with one minor revision. Okay.
Okay,
Second and discussion.
could you want to second the motion and then we'll comment on it?
Second.
Second? Okay, now I'll turn to Mrs. Krieger for questions or revision.
On page BM3, midway down, in regards to May service course on portfolios and holistic scoring assessment, I believe the public record should indicate the exchange that happened during that meeting between the board members, which led to its failure for lack of a motion.
I gotta dig mine out.
You want a more complete explanation of the exchange.
A summary.
That we need to bring them back for approval later then.
You do?
You would like to see the language before you approve them?
That's not necessary.
Okay. But
We
the
will-
language will say something to the effect of,
We will
What
accept,
was submitted by myself and the input from the other board members.
we will accept the assignment to elaborate and make the language of the minutes more complete,
That's fine.
and you'll accept them tonight with that
That's
intention.
fine. That's fine.
I don't like
Okay.
the way it is. I'm not gonna-
is everybody okay with that?
Is it really necessary? I mean, what's the purpose?
What's the board's pleasure?
The only difficulty becomes that we are now in a position where we're very openly approving something that we have no idea what it is.
Right.
I don't know if that's a good idea.
Well, if you prefer
I mean,
to
I know
bring it back,
there's
that's
trust,
fine. I'm just,
yeah,
I'm not
it's a
interested in
technicality. I don't
delaying
think it's-
the approval of
Right.
the minutes. I would just like them to be a little bit more precise about the exchange that took place between the board on that particular item.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor. There's a second to approve the minutes as they were presented. There's been a question and there's been a request to add to that. Are there 5 board members that would like to change that way the minutes are written and add that request from Mrs. Krieger? Do I hear any other support? Otherwise, I'll call for the question and just ask that the minutes will pass as presented.
I'd be willing
Is
to
there a
support it if she could
This is-
articulate just the general, the broad statement that she'd like added. I don't think we go into detailed summaries in any of these minutes, otherwise
We do
they'd be
not.
20 pages long.
Yeah.
So I
We
can
do
see
not.
if she wants to add that following discussion by and concerns regarding such and such, that the motion failed, if that's what you're looking for,
Well,
because that's
Mrs. Chair, I
just.
submitted a document for the board's perusal that night in regards to that particular issue, and that was not mentioned in the minutes. And
Okay.
there was a brief exchange.
Fine,
as
would
I
you like
recall.
that made a part of the minutes?
That's what I'm requesting.
Okay,
Sim-
then that's an actual document.
Simply stated that Mrs. Krieger submitted a document.
You have a copy of the document I submitted, don't you, Frank? I mean, yeah.
I'm not present, but I assume I do.
Mhm.
And do you want language taken from the document, or simply the stated fact that you submitted a document which led to discussion and there was a failure to have a motion?
Will that suffice?
Does that
That's
suffice?
fine,
Suffice?
that satisfies.
Okay, do we
Maybe,
need
Mr.
an
Ware, you
amendment
ought-
to?
Is there a
maybe you
title
ought
to
add
that document
Make a
that can be
note
referenced?
Do we need an
that the
amendment to the
document is
motion?
attached in a part of these minutes and incorporate along with your permanent copy to make, in case there's any
Okay.
discussion.
Well, there is more extensive minutes, I believe, internally.
Okay.
No, I said was, maybe you ought to make a copy of that document,
Right.
and since he references it in the minutes, make a notation that attached copy is affixed here to
Or
the part of
affixed.
these
Fine.
minutes, and put that in with a permanent copy of the minutes.
I
I believe you
understand.
made the motion to approve.
Yes, sir.
Are you okay with the amendment?
Yes, sir.
I'll
Mrs.
second.
Scher, are you okay with
Certainly.
the amendment?
Certainly.
Amendment, okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Moving on to item 2, committee reports. 2A is facilities, buildings, and grounds. Mr. John Schilling.
Yes, I had the opportunity to go through Penndale Middle School to evaluate the renovations with Mr. Wood, and it's just coming along very well. I'm pleased to report the transition of the building is it's really exciting to go through there and see what they're doing. The annex area is very close to being completed, and the occupancy should be taking place about mid-February. The new electric service was energized last week, which was a very important phase to the overall project, and much work has been completed on various mechanical systems throughout the entire building. Now, the next phase of the construction will be the area that was originally the district offices. This area was renovated a few years ago, but will require extra window wall changes, installation of a sprinkler system, and conversion from a steam heating system to a hot water system, and this will take approximately a 5-week period. So it's really, according to Art's, going along on schedule and doing quite well. Also, in regards to the great blizzard of '96, obviously had a great effect on our properties. I just want to commend Mr. Wood and the plant operations staff for their efforts and their dedication in the undertaking of this fantastic task of preparing our schools for opening. One thing that should be noted that we did overspend our budget for snow removal. There will be an attempt to recover funds for snow cleanup, for getting a reimbursement from the state, which is under our specific guidelines, and which we were successful in doing last year. And that's my new report.
Thank you, John. Any questions of Mr. Schilling?
I have
Okay.
only one comment that I would like to interject at this time to the report, is that we had a copy of a letter that was sent to Clytus Walton Company related to their ability to give us some the necessary oil that we needed for our boilers up at the high school. We were running short. And I just want to commend the company for coming through us in a need time and to meet our needs, which is, shows that they're part of the community. So I think that should be part of the report.
Thank you, Don. Pat?
Well, I had a couple of questions on this letter. Should I wait till later to ask them, or now?
Bring it up now.
I noticed that on January the 5th, we had 6 gallons of oil on hand, which was a Friday. 6,000, I'm sorry. And by Monday, we were down to 1,700, which means in 2 or 3 days, we used 4,300 gallons of oil.
That's correct, and that was actually low usage. We were in a low wind chill factor, if you recall.
Right.
And we typically go to a setback or non-occupied for the weekend.
Right.
When we have that kind of wind chill factor, we do not go to unoccupied, but we use fuel in that building. That truck makes a regular run to our building. Our consumption in that building is, for 440,000 square feet, is more than you would expect.
So you're saying that 2,000 gallons a day is normal usage in that building?
With a wind chill factor that we had those days, that's common usage.
How about without the wind chill factor?
Less than that. I can give you actual, it's based on degree days, but I can give you consumption for a year and show you what.
Is there something that should be addressed to improve that, or are we getting maximum efficiency out of our consumption?
With all of the energy projects that we've completed, we have reduced that considerably since the time I took over the department. We insulated, it never had insulation on the exposed roof area. We hired college students and high school students in the summer, bought bulk insulation and insulated the building. We've done many things we put an energy management system in, and you can see from our past consumption the reduction that we've produced.
So we are getting maximum efficiency?
Maximum efficiency.
Who is our normal supplier?
Petron under contract, and I must say, I learned today in conjunction with the letter that Mr. Walton was kind enough, Petron is billing us for the fuel. He picked it up from Petron, so he's not even going to charge us for the transportation or any increased dollar amount for the oil.
Excellent. Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Am I to understand that it wasn't even considered their sale?
Wasn't
For
their
Walton
sale.
Farm?
We were desperate. We could have switched to gas. The problem is, when it's below 20 degrees in West Conshohocken, gas is at a premium. And I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to take people off of plowing to come in and convert the boilers to gas.
Can I ask one question that's related to the situation that did occur? 2,000 gallons of fuel being used per day, if it's seen as perhaps typical for very cold January days, why would we be left with 4 days' worth of fuel on a Friday? Don't we have an automatic delivery that's
I'm dealing
more
with that
secure?
right now with Petron, and it's not very pleasant. We had called 2 days in advance of Friday. My argument is, when they knew that we were scheduled for Monday delivery, my argument is, when you knew the storm was coming, why didn't you deliver on Friday or Saturday?
Not only that, I'd say with or without the blizzard occurring on a Sunday, I don't believe that it's really a good idea to have yourself down to your last day of use for a scheduled delivery.
That was strictly a problem related to Petron. If you recall, we were dealing with leftover weather, and they were running behind on their schedules. There's no excuse for it.
Okay,
We
I
understand
would
that.
like that addressed so that we don't find ourselves, particularly on a Friday, or that we're down to within 4 days of fuel before we're even looking for
We
delivery.
would have had it drop first thing Monday morning.
And that would have been the last day of fuel that we were carrying.
We got our drop Monday afternoon from
Right.
Mr. Wall.
Right, thank you. Okay, that's
Any
just
other
one-
questions or comments for facilities, buildings, and grounds?
Just one more. John mentioned about snow removal. Will we be getting some sort of report or something?
You'll be getting a report. We, today, a letter came out of the governor's office on the 16th. We received it yesterday, and we had to fax back our expenditures, estimated expenditures, by this afternoon. I had guessed that it was somewhere around $40,000. It's $40,038 after we did crunch some numbers. They're not final numbers, but they're the numbers we returned to the governor.
Is that our total cost or our overlay?
That's total cost for this storm, between
For
the
this storm
6th
alone?
of January and the 12th of January. That includes outside contractors, overtime, equipment maintenance, which we had some repairs to equipment, fuel, which was considerable, just fueling all the equipment that we had, plus our overtime.
Thank you. What was the budget amount to you? We were somewhere
The
around
budget for
30?
the whole year was $10,000, of which last year we didn't use any. The year before, we used considerable.
But it was
And
ice,
this
so-
year, we're probably approaching 60 or 70,000 with all the storms to date. It's not nice.
But we are
For
looking
Dennis and I
we
guess,
are
to
looking
pick up
for
with,
it.
right?
We're hoping, because of the president declaring Pennsylvania an emergency state, that we will get. John Strobel wrote a program, as Mr. Schilling alluded to, in '94, the year of the ice, and we did get $11,000.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Hearing none, we'll move on to item 2B, Community Services and Policy. Mr. Don Hill.
Yes, tonight we are scheduled to adopt 2 new policies. Both of these policies are included in the packets that the audience has been provided. For the TV audience, the first policy relates to students who bring weapons onto the school property, including school buses, and during events on evenings, weekends, and holidays. Consequences for such actions are outlined in this policy. The second policy pertains to the reporting of the instance of child abuse. This policy requires the superintendent to formulate and distribute guidelines to all members of the school district staff. I'd like to recommend approval of these 2 policies.
Okay, Mr. Hill, would it be okay if we put the 2 together, or would you recommend that we handle them separately?
I would say you put them together. Recommend approval
Does
of
anybody
both
have a
policies.
problem if we put them together?
No,
Okay,
I think we've read them and discussed them.
so then, Mr. Hill, is that a motion from you for
Yes,
those 2?
that's a motion.
Second?
Okay, it's a motion made and seconded by Ms. Krieger. Questions or comments?
Voting prior to the audience of citizens is just the issue
Well,
regarding their
I'll
right to
turn
remonstrate.
I'll turn to Ken and to Ken to help me out on that.
You, I believe you've got these discussed at 2 prior meetings. Isn't this a second reading for this?
Yes.
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 Will it be okay?
There's been an opportunity for audience participation.
Okay, so we're okay.
Okay,
Let's
we're
vote.
okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it.
One other comment, the policy committee is continuing to work upon a number of policies, among those one being the policy that goes under many different names related to speech. And the other policy we're working on now, and we're bringing to the board in the next month or so, is one related to the use of facilities related to political election policies. End of the report.
Okay, any questions or comments for Mr. Hill? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to item 2C, elementary education. Mr. Bill Allen.
No report.
Any questions or comments of Bill? Hearing none, we'll move on to item 2D, secondary education. Mr. Pat Mosey.
No report, sir.
Any questions or comments for Pat? Hearing none, we'll move on to item 2E, special education and student services. Mrs. Sharice Krieger.
No report.
Okay, any questions or comments for Sharice? Hearing none, we'll move on to item 2F, support services, David White's. Pat Mosey, you're the alternate. Any report?
David did not give me anything to report, so I will say no report, sir.
Okay, any questions or comments for Pat? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to item 2F, finance. Mrs. Vicky Scherer.
Mr. President, I have no report. However, I would like us to consider a consensus regarding giving Dennis the go-ahead to at least investigate or bring forward some recommendations of firms that could be considered for the detailed systems analysis and a review, so that we could move forward and become organized in that manner, since we're dealing with so many hot financial issues coming up. And that would provide a lot of the answers that we're looking for, as well as assist Dennis in the development of a general accounting manual, which many of us have hoped for many years now.
I believe you brought that up at an earlier
We don't
meeting.
require a
Yeah.
vote on this. I believe we just need to at least see what's out there. We can move forward at a later time, perhaps with an RFP, but at least we could see what firms are out there in that sort of business.
Does
So I
anybody
just
have a
think
problem with authorizing Dennis to go ahead with what
to help
Mr. Scherer
assist me
brought up?
and
I think we should put some kind of a time frame as to when Mr. Kelly would start to come back to us, so we could, have it maybe at next month's work session, or, March's work session.
Dennis, what do you think? Is that early, late?
March's work
March?
session would be great. I'm working on
dealing
the
with
other
budget.
2 now and trying to do preliminary budget
Yeah.
numbers.
Because
Okay.
I'm thinking it might coincide with that, Tom.
I don't
Okay.
think there'll be that much on Dennis himself, other than to give some recommendations as to
Right.
what firms we should perhaps be considering for this,
Okay.
because it is a specialized line of
Okay.
accounting. Okay, so
I don't
as
hear
long as there's
I
no
don't hear
dissent, I just
anybody
want to
objecting.
clarify that there's
Right,
no dissent
okay.
because there's never really been clear
Right, I don't
consensus.
sense any dissent.
Thank you. I
Mr.
appreciate that, no report.
Mr. President, I would just
Yes.
like to say that I appreciate Mrs. Scher and Mr. Kelly working on the finance team together, but what I'd appreciate, many times Mrs. Scher has provided us with extensive reports, which I feel she's done a good job at, but I need to hear more from Dennis from time to time as a finance expert, that you do concur
Yes, I do.
with what she's
Yes,
saying
yes.
and
She
what
had
is coming
spoken to me
forth, and
about
that
that
these
before.
are, in fact, your wishes, and how you want the finance department to be run, and the direction in which you wish to take. And I guess I know as one board member, I need to hear more
Well, from what-
expert opinion in this field.
And I appreciate that, Mrs. Mengel. What I had heard the board say before is, and on many of your, when you were running for election, that you wanted to do a 10 or 15-year study of bond expenses, and so I felt that that was what the board wanted to do. And you as my employers, that's fine with me.
But
I would like to get that
But need to hear
cleared up
back that
also.
you concur, that you're comfortable, and that you can
I
in
am
fact
comfortable with
carry
that,
on.
and I think for once and for all, it would clear up many of the rumors or whatever out in the community about the bond funds, and I'd be more than happy to have that finished with.
Very good.
And resolve that period of time that was
Exactly.
even prior to Dennis being here. He, like I said before, he's so busy trying to keep up with today, it's a little difficult to catch up with the past.
Just wish to hear more directly from you.
Fine.
Thank you.
That's to make sure that I'm not holding a bat over your head, Dennis, I guess.
Any other questions or comments for finance? Okay, hearing none, we'll skip item H and we'll move to item 2I, legislative, Donna Mengel and Vicki Scher.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. I had opportunity last night for the first time to attend the MCIU Legislative Committee meeting. And at that time, I was informed that there are 3 bills currently under consideration by the Senate Education Committee. SB 708 by Senator Hart of Allegheny amends, is an amendment to increase the eligibility requirement for tenure to 3 years. The current requirement allows tenure after 2 years. SB 1266 from Senator Swartz of Philadelphia amends the school code to provide a financial incentive for school districts which establish full-day kindergarten programs. I have a personal opinion on that. It's not necessary this evening. If Judy was ever to come forward with that desire, but the formula and the ratio for that is $2,000 times full-day kindergarten average daily membership times the aid ratio, and it was good for 3 years. And then you're on your own for fully funding that program. There's SB 1352 by Chair Rhodes of Schuylkill, establishing the State Education Standards and Accountability Act in order to identify a state education improvement panel and to empower the panel to develop a comprehensive system of academic standards which students would be required to meet or exceed in grades 5, 8, 11, and graduation. And this is in conjunction with the goals 2000, but it's a panel separate and apart to specifically determine those goals.
Donna, in the,
Sure.
the first one you mentioned about the
Yes.
10-year going from 2 years to 3 years,
The current requirement allows tenure after 2 years.
what?
The bill is looking to increase
make
that to
it
3
three?
years.
Is part of that bill also that tenure has to be renewed every 10 year, or can be
Recertification?
Yeah, re-tenured?
Retenured.
Once you have tenure,
No,
you
that
have
was the
tenure.
main aware to me last night, but what I can do is get this House bill, the latest print number, and provide that to
I
you.
thought I had heard that in one of these things that's been flying around.
That was kids.
It's
That was kids.
recertification
That
is a
was
part
kids,
of
too.
kids too.
Just kids too, it's not
Yeah.
part of this?
Right.
Okay.
I'll get that for you anyway, Bill.
Donna, what was that second bill? I'm sorry.
The second bill is SB 1266, Swartz of
Thank you.
Philadelphia, and that's an incentive for full-day kindergarten.
Thank you.
Notes, the General Assembly will reconvene in full session on Monday, January 22nd. Governor Ridge is expected to present his Commonwealth budget proposal on February 6th. It is anticipated that the proposed budget will not increase spending over the current $16.2 billion general operating fund and will not include tax increases. It is likely that legislation will be introduced to address the weather emergency of 1996 as it relates to school days and hours. the bill will require school districts to make every effort to achieve 180 days of instruction or 900 elementary hours, 990 secondary hours of instruction. If the legislation mirrors the '94 Weather Emergency Act, one Saturday a month would be permitted for instruction. Obviously, with our calendar dealings tonight, this doesn't necessarily pertain to us unless another blizzard would occur, but that's the update at this point.
Donna, could you repeat, what were the conditions? The days were also still locked at 180? Because there has
180 days.
been, okay, there's some hope by the school districts that they would relinquish that and allow us to make it up through an extension of the day. In other words, through relief by the governor, we would be able to tack on just 15 days and 15 minutes each day, and then perhaps be able to make up for the snow days in that way, but they don't seem to be considering that.
That was brought up last night, and Lorraine Stout said no, that it's not being permitted at this time, that they're pushing for Saturdays instead of just tacking on minutes. Right now, as it's written, it's 180 days of instruction or the hours. It isn't and/or.
Well, considering that your winter storm weather really ends somewhere in March, when you can finally breathe a sigh of relief, and if it's one a month, then you're talking April, May, and part of June, so that if one a month, you're lucky to make up 2 to 3 days under those conditions. So it isn't exactly a big deal of relief that way. A lot of flexibility.
Maybe we can start ahead of time.
See,
Gotta wait until March.
start holding Saturdays before you have the snow days.
Well, I don't know. No, we
Doesn't
make
seem
up
like
days
that's
now.
gonna be all that much of a added opportunity, but thanks.
End of report,
That's
Mr.
where the state
President.
goes.
Any other questions or comments? Donna or Vicki?
No.
I just have one.
Thank you.
Donna, on the Saturday schedule,
Correct.
do we have an option as to whether we can have the students attend a half a day or a full day, or they have to go a full day?
I can check for you. I couldn't answer you.
Because that might be a little easier on the kids going to school on Saturday. They only have to go a couple hours opposed to
One of the
full
questions
day.
that came forward at the meeting last night is, why not Sunday? It wasn't a popular response. It didn't go very far.
Donna,
And it didn't come out of our school district.
is this just under the jurisdiction of the governor, or would he have to take it through the legislature?
Legislation would be introduced.
Okay,
Right.
that's what I'm thinking.
Any
Okay,
other
so there
questions
we
or
are.
comments? I have
The
one
end of the year will
question.
be
Yes, sir.
here.
There is a House bill, I don't know what number, it probably is still in committee, but I'd be curious if you could update me, Donna, on the House bill that has to do with prevailing wage. I'd like to know where it is, if it ever has a chance of getting out of committee, and I'd just like an update on that.
I will get that for you. I'll get it off of Joe Gladick.
It has to do with
And then I'll
prevailing
send it out
wage
to
and
all the
giving,
board members.
and offering relief to school districts on projects. Any other questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to item 2J, North Monco Technical Career Center. That's a combination of Bill, Donna, and Pat.
You want to say it?
Go ahead.
You're on a roll.
Gentlemen, I wasn't there. I was at this
I'd
one.
just like to note that Mrs. Mingle was absent last night, and I'd like to know why she wasn't at 2 places at once, but
Thank you.
we had another enjoyable meeting. Just to mention a heads up, nothing definitive, but we were alerted last night that their current contract for their teachers runs out in June, and they will soon be entering into negotiations, and I'm sure that we will be advised accordingly and updated, but just to give you a heads up right now that they are soon to enter negotiations with the teachers over there. That's all I have, unless I missed something. It was a fast meeting.
Yeah, the only other thing is that Dr. Irwin, who is the director of the school, is visiting the 5 sending school districts, making the presentation on the expansion of the Voc Tech school. He is scheduled to be here February 6th at our normal committee meeting to give North Penn the proposal for the expansion.
Will he be forwarding
Pardon me?
any reports ahead? Will he be sending us any materials
He just
to
said that he
review
will
prior
keep
to?
us, he
We've
will
gotten
keep
them.
the sending districts up to date as things transgress.
We have a
Okay, other
package,
than the-
Vicki.
So
Okay,
that's
one
why
more
I'm
issue.
saying to you.
But I didn't know if there's anything
That's
specific.
why I'm saying to you, I'm just mentioning to you and giving you a heads up on the contract. Nothing, they haven't met, they haven't discussed anything. Just letting you know that a new contract will be forthcoming this year because the current contract expires June 30th this year.
Okay.
That's all.
But as far as when he comes next month, we receive that in our packet, the folder. That's all we'll probably receive before he
I
comes,
would
right?
think so, that's pretty,
It
I
is,
read
it's
it
a lot.
comprehensive.
Right.
It
I
was
just
there.
didn't know
Whatever
if
you
he
like,
had any financial aspects that he was wanting to
I'm
present to
sure-
us.
I'm sure that he will. He did mention again last night about the expansion, and there is some diversification here as to how we can finance this expansion. They're gonna leave it up, looks like they're gonna leave it up to each sending district to determine how they're gonna finance it themselves. They're really pretty flexible there. But in terms of what Mr. Clemens is asking, if anyone's gotten a copy of that binder, that architect's report, I've never seen anything more comprehensive than that. I mean, I don't think all the figures are in there, and I think that's why he wants to come to meet with us. We had a brief presentation the night we had the dinner there, but I think he wants, and I think it's right that he does this. I think it's the right way to do it, to come before the entire board and the community and just show, because I thought it was an impressive presentation. I've only been there for 2 meetings, and I'm impressed with what they do over there. I really am. That's
Okay.
my report, and that's.
Any other questions?
That's our report.
It's a good report. No other questions or comments? Hearing none, we'll move on to item K, Merck Science Partnership, David Whites and John Schilling. John, do you have anything?
No, I do not.
Any questions or comments about the Merck Science Partnership? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to item L, other assignments. Anybody have anything to report?
Mr. President, I don't have another assignment, but there is another issue which should have come up under community services, I believe, and that is the contractual arrangement that we have with the Temecin Police Department, and where does that currently stand, and I believe that should be under community services. I'm not even sure Mr. Hill knows that, but if that's so, I think we need to deal with that and place that under committee now.
Right, Don, you, anything to comment on it? I know Dr. Bose did share, right before I came tonight, he talked to me about it. Anything we want to comment on or take any official action tonight? I don't believe we need to tonight.
Well, yes, I know what that report is, and requesting the funding again for the next year. My personal opinion on that is that because of a number of reasons, I've vacillated on this one direction, but right now I'm in the position that I think we should approve it for the next year, one more year, as it exists. That'd be my recommendation to the board.
Was that any increase?
It will automatically increase. It's a per pupil expense.
It's a per pupil expense, I believe it's
So it will
$20.
probably increase $4,000 or $5,000 next year.
I think you better explain to the audience what we're talking about.
Right, this contract didn't
think
come
they
through a
ought-
committee
No.
meeting,
Tell me
which
what's going
I
on.
personally
Pardon me?
believe it should have went through a work session.
Yeah, I don't.
Because it is new to many of the board members that weren't here. It was a new unprecedented contract when it went into effect. In all the times that we've operated our schools, where Lansdale was at one time our only high school, where it became our only junior high, and all the school districts, all the communities fed into that, there was never a reciprocation, so I don't know.
Well, Mr. Short, two questions. What I wish is not for an extensive conversation about it tonight, that it be placed under Mr. Hill's committee, that we have it on the agenda next month. And the other question I would have is for solicitor. Solicitor, is that a matter that would be handled in executive session, or do you believe it should be in public?
There's one area.
Mrs. Sher, let
It
me-
expires by June 30th. If they're not notified by January 30th, it's self-renewed. So you can discuss it next February, but you can't do anything about it. Next month. From
Solicitor, is that a matter of executive session, or does it?
My understanding is it's simply a contract with a township, correct?
Correct.
Police Department?
Police department, no, that's not appropriate for executive
Okay,
session.
thank you for the clarification.
But it does have a deadline. If we don't notify them by January 30th,
The deadline provides, Mrs. Shear, that we can contact them and request discussion before the end of the month.
okay,
What I
so
will
then
do,
we can
right,
extend
as
over.
board president, what I will do is I
Fine.
will poll the board over the next week, and if I hear from enough board members that there is no desire to renew it, then I will call for a special action meeting. However, if I poll the board and hear that there is no objection to it, I will assume and get together with Mr. Hill that we will let it roll over for the next year. Anybody have a problem with that?
Yeah, I do.
Okay?
I do. I think this is the third year of it, I believe.
I have no idea. what
It's the
year.
last year of the
Right.
It's the
contract.
last one.
And
It is the final year of the contract? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, 93.
It was
May
a
of
3-year, I
93.
think.
Yeah, 93.
And I think in principle that it's wrong for us to be paying this money. And I did some checking. We pay them so much per student, as I understand.
I believe it's $20.
$20 a student. But we still pay when they come for events. We have paid them this year, I did some checking, $60,000 to $70,000 to the Talmenton Police. Now, I know we have a high school there, but everybody has a school. It's an awful lot of money. We paid for at least one full-time policeman. At that rate, maybe half of a second one. I don't think we use that much service. And I think in principle, what we're doing is taking North Penn tax money and giving it to Talmenton residents. And I don't think that's right. I don't think it's right that anybody that lives in Talmenton votes on this issue.
Well, Bill,
I don't think it's appropriate.
I sit here and I have
We're paying for, please don't interrupt. We're paying for the police service. Everybody has police service. We have DARE officers. We don't pay those people. We have a junior high that has a juvenile aid officer. We don't pay Lansdale. And I don't think this is appropriate. If every time a township built a house, threw some money towards us to help pay for new teachers and desks, that's different. But they don't. There's a high school there. That comes with the territory.
Bill, you're preaching to the choir in the sense.
I'm not
preaching
to you. I'm preaching to
It is not a
everybody.
popular
I'm
position.
venting.
But you're venting. Well, if you vented, can I please say that when we did this, I had concerns because it was a new thing.
We didn't
It's
do
a
it.
tax shift.
We didn't do it.
It is a tax shift. There's
We
no doubt
inherited
about
it.
it.
Yeah.
And I live there. I know that in fact that I'm benefiting from the $50,000 that's going into the Talmenton budget for the police services. However, I do sit up here with a broader view, with a broader constituency, and recognizing the fact that we had a junior high that for many years served all 8th and 9th graders from throughout the township, and we didn't pay Lansdale to cover the police services that were needed there. I've heard for many years that sometimes that young junior high can be a bigger hotbed than the high school. I also know that we have Montgomery, that other businesses in this community create greater police service needs. Montgomery Mall creates a bigger police service need, but they don't pay beyond the regular tax levy for the police services that they put on Montgomery, nor do we prorate every other police department out according to service, whether they have 3 elementary schools versus 1 with 2 or anything like that. I think the biggest concern is that I would have liked to have seen a stronger legal advisement on this. It was sort of given to us that it was an ambiguous part of the law, and that as far as our ability to enter into this contract is one thing, the ability to expend funds for this purpose was fitting a gray area, and I did ask, Mr. Riz, I did ask Mr. Potash for any examples of where other consolidated school districts have entered into such agreements. And at that time, he could not locate any. We do have many consolidated districts. There's one high school for the Wissahickon School District. I don't know that there's any kind of reciprocation there to the particular community that houses their high school.
Right.
I would like to see if we have a precedent.
I'd like to bring this to a close. It needs to be completed before the end of the month. There's not a motion on the floor. I've made a recommendation, and unless I heard from board members, that I would assume to let it roll over for another year. Now, unless there's a motion put on the floor that we end this contract, we will operate under the premise that it will roll over for the next year.
I would prefer that we tell them that we're going to end the contract, knowing full well that if 5 people want to renew it, we can do it at a later date.
Are you going to make that as a motion?
I don't think you can.
I don't think you can do that.
Maybe what might be in order, since Dr. Bose has already indicated a provision in the contract of notification, maybe we should simply notify them that we are going to be taking a very close look at this in February during the work session. And then take action, final action on it in February. But I think that we should at least notify them that we are going to take action.
Yeah, but
That was going to be my recommendation, since I won that policy here tonight, that thing tonight, is that that we notify them that, can we extend, will they allow us to act on this thing because of the new board, whatever other reasons we like to respond to this proposal in February after we've had a time to discuss it and see if we can get an extension. If we can't get an extension, then let us look at it by a phone call, whatever we have to do after that, but I think they'll give us an extension. And then we'll have a chance to do it in a work session and discuss this in a better than bring it up here at the last minute.
Right.
Okay, well then, you'll work with Don. You'll need to work with.
I think that's an excellent idea, so that there's fair
Okay,
discussion
you just
for
all need
everyone.
to
They may
keep in
not know
mind,
where
though,
they
there may
stand.
be a need for a special action meeting before the end of this month.
If in fact they don't accept or
Correct.
or aren't cooperative.
Correct.
Well,
Mr.
in
Combs,
order
I
for
have a-
them,
I'm sorry.
excuse me, but in order for there to, we have not been asked to review this contract yet, but I need to tell you, in order for them to have an extension, if one is needed, they may need formal board approval, which they may not be able to give you by February 1st. So if you need to, it's my suggestion that you allow us the opportunity to review this contract so that you can be in a position to take action
Dennis
before
could help
February
you.
1st if you.
Right. All
it
you really have to
self-renewing?
do is notify the township that you wish to discuss it.
That's what I said earlier.
That's what Dr. Bozeman
Okay.
said. There's
We don't have to
no other
commit.
notification need. If you just can tell them that you want to meet with them and discuss it, that's it. And then, as it says, after such a notification, any further contributions described in this resolution shall be governed by the provisions of the new resolution.
Dennis, you have a copy of it.
Yes.
I didn't bring mine. Would you pass it down so Mr. Roos can look at
Mr.
it?
Clemens, my question's to Mr. Roos. Is this something we could discuss in an exexive session?
He just said no.
No?
No,
Okay.
Do you need a motion to?
I'm not sure yet. Let's turn it to our solicitor for a few
It is not
passes.
self-renewing, is it, Dennis?
Yes, it is.
It is self-renewing, so then it would roll over.
That's what I said.
Self-renewing year to year, so another 3 years? No, 1 year.
But because it has.
No, it's year to year.
Year to year?
It was for 3 years for the first round, and then it becomes annual.
Notify them that we wish to discuss it.
It's a tough one. No one denies that, certainly there's attacks on the police force at Tillmanson. That high
But
school.
we've got to do it before February 1st, I believe. Right, so that's why I come back and say we may need that special action.
Do we still, or do we just have to do the meeting?
When are we going to discuss it? We can't discuss it.
Come back to personnel.
Okay.
Come back to
All right.
personnel.
I turn, Solicitor Roos.
We're not going to have them in the 28th. That will have to, yes, okay. Okay,
We do personnel or special action.
okay, right, that's right,
That's what I'm trying
okay.
to say.
So what are we gonna do?
All right,
Okay, I'll come back. We will have to defer this, this contract to a special action meeting before the end of this month. It's the only way we see it.
We'll need a special action meeting the end of this month anyway.
That's correct. Anybody else have any questions or comments on this agreement? Okay. Any other questions or comments for other assignments?
Mr. Clemens, I would just like to update the board in regards to the nomination of myself to the Montgomery County IU. I was notified by Dr. Harkins prior to the blizzard that in fact North Penn was not successful in voting your nominee for one of the 3 positions that was vacant at the time. However, the IU has requested that I sit from now until May as a liaison member to the IU on behalf of North Penn. And in May, there will be 9 positions open, and Dr. Harkins assured me that at that time we should be successful in achieving one of those seats.
Thank you.
So from now until then, I will
And
be a
you will-
liaison.
Okay. Well, then we will include that for next month under reports.
I have real concern
I
over
have a
how this
question about
occurred.
that.
Right,
I have, I think the situation occurred because Dick Bowman, rather than maintaining his seat, as we were led to believe until his actual departure, sent in a formal resignation, and therefore vacated North Penn from the board. Is that not true? I mean, that's the only way I can see that we would have lost our seat and would not have been able to reappoint.
Well, isn't there a general election? Didn't we used to get ballots in the mail?
Well, we voted for
That's
Dick.
in May.
But we voted
Right.
for Dick,
May, June,
and that's-
yes.
And
That's in May.
Mr. Weir, could you clarify that, why it is that, my assumption was when we discussed the vote, the IU position, that it was going to remain,
that she would
and
basically
would be
fill out
appointed.
Mr. Bowman's term.
And then I found that Mr. Bowman actually formally resigned prior to an appointment. Is that what's left us vacated from the IU?
Dr. Harkin explained the process and explained the requirements to me.
And to me.
We met the requirements. Mrs. Krieger's papers were submitted in a timely fashion. They met the deadline. They were complete and signed and there in time. And I believe they had several positions to appoint.
Yes,
I believe 3,
yes.
and they voted, the board voted to
And there were 7 nominees.
appoint 3 people, and there were 7, filled 3 vacancies, and there were 7 nominees. Dr. Harkin and I have never had any discussion about whether Dick Bowman submitted a formal resignation or not, and we never had any conversation about what, how that, if he did in fact, how that
I think I
influenced.
found it in one of the, in a subsequent minutes where he actually resigned.
I've never discussed that with anyone.
Okay.
Oh, no, I did not.
Including-
I'd like to understand how we ended up vacated when the position was gained through an actual, a valid election of the full board, and here through an appointed board, through that small group that exists at the IU, they vacated that seat. And
Vicki, wouldn't it be
I'll
similar to
discuss it with
someone on
him.
this board resigned and you would submit names, recommendations, and the
Correct.
board would appoint
Yes,
someone to fill
but
that vacancy?
traditionally
Oh,
when.
but maybe it's not tradition. I mean, maybe we're in a situation where they have certain guidelines, maybe they set some policies and procedures up since
Well, that's what
the last time, and now this is how they do it.
It
Well,
seems to be.
Chair, I'm not really concerned
Okay.
about it, because I will be
They've
there.
allowed her to sit there. so-
She'll sit there, but I'm
Representing-
saying we have no
right.
voting representation, be it on contracts or
Only a
on
couple
any,
months, Vicki, don't May.
and then everything, but I'd like to know, so we could see if there's a way to avoid this in the future if it should occur.
Right.
Prior to the election, Dr. Harkin didn't treat this as unusual or unique in any way.
Right.
No.
I didn't read it that way.
It seemed to be a very routine thing for them, according to their procedures.
Right.
Okay.
If you want to investigate, it might not be bad to make a phone call, Ken, but I don't know what we can do about it now.
No,
I think it's
I'm just saying I'd like to
May's
find out exactly how
Yeah,
that
May's
occurred.
around the corner, 3 months, 4 months.
Are there any other comments on other assignments? The only thing that I would have, I'd like to bring up, and I'll put Dr. Mangano on the spot a little bit. Could you just bring us up to date on long-range planning?
Well,
It's on the agenda.
I will do that now if you want me to, but I think.
Oh, it is later? Where is it?
Number 10, at the end, the last.
Strategic planning.
Oh, there it is, I'm sorry.
last
Okay,
page.
we're saving the best for last.
She only has
She's after
46
Dennis.
pages over there to
Okay.
present to us today.
Okay, I apologize. Okay, any other assignments? Okay, hearing none, now we will come back to item 2H, personnel, and I'll turn it over to Ms. Donna Mangle.
Thank you, Mr. President. At this time, I am going to defer to Acting Solicitor Roos for a statement, and also I will be requesting that, following that statement, that you grant, Mr. President, an executive session for purpose of personnel to discuss a contract.
Thank you. I believe you have a contract, though, that I need to refer to.
One moment.
Thank you. It is my understanding that 3 individuals, three individuals tonight anyway, Mr. Weir, Mr. Wood, and Mr. Kelly, all have, by contract with the school district, have the right to have a determination made as to their status and the renewal of their contracts with the district at a regular meeting held at least 150 days prior to the expiration date of their contracts. It is also my understanding that all 3 of these individuals have agreed to waive the requirement that it be at a regular meeting and have agreed that it may be at a special meeting. I just want to confirm with these 3 individuals that my understanding is correct. Is that correct, Mr. Kelly?
That's correct.
Is that correct, Mr. Wood? That's correct. And is that correct, Mr. Weir?
It is.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Roos, I would ask that you would just add one more statement that I understood in our meeting, and that is that these gentlemen had wished that to happen by February 1.
That is correct. They did not explicitly waive the 150-day requirement.
That's
That is
correct.
So that's still,
Can we please add that and have the gentleman confirm?
Is that correct, gentlemen? I'll ask you individually, but the understanding is that it is not your desire to waive the 150-day deadline for the board to make their decision, which would take it to February 1st. Is that correct, Mr. Kelly?
That is correct, Mr.
Is that correct, Mr. Wood?
That is correct.
And is that correct, Mr. Weir?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Okay, at this time, Mr. President, I request an executive session. I wish that you would grant that, and at that time, we will deliberate the contract of Personnel Director Fred Schmidt. It is the wish of Mr. Schmidt that a decision be made by this board tonight in compliance with the existing contract it is written, and that I will come out of that meeting with all of you and place a motion on the table tonight.
Okay, request is granted.
Thank you.
The board will be going into an executive session.
Conference room C.
We will be going in which conference room?
C.
The board will be going into conference room C for an executive session to discuss a personnel matter. Yeah, we want to
Recess.
Yes. Okay, we'll recess for hopefully no more than 15 to 20 minutes. Two was for the board to discuss administrators' contracts, the administrators that we spoke about, and two were Mr. Wood, Mr. Kelly, and Mr. Weir. We also talked about Mr. Schmidt's contract, and I believe we will be talking about them later this evening. Mrs. Mangle.
No further report, and those actions will be taken at the time brought forth by Superintendent Bose. End of personnel report.
Okay, are there any questions or comments for personnel or of Donna? Okay, hearing none, that concludes part 2 of our agenda for this evening, and now we will move on to item 3, which is the audience of citizens. I just asked that everyone would keep their comments to 3 minutes or less.
Mrs. Tenney.
Okay, excuse me.
Mrs. Tenney.
We did have one person write in ahead of time, Mrs. Tenney, and then we'll go to Mrs. Clark.
Okay, Jocelyn Tenney, North Wales. I attended the entire work session this past Tuesday and was appalled at this board's ignorance about team teaching. The majority of you ran during the election on a platform that opposed team teaching. During an election, voters are used to candidates using innuendo and generalizations, but it cannot be tolerated now that you are in positions of authority and make decisions affecting this community. You had only to attend some of the team-taught classes to learn a little bit more than you know. You had only to read recent Philadelphia Inquirer articles about team teaching and how it's being implemented in New Jersey and Pennsylvania. You could have read the Reporter and learned that Souderton and Wissahickon have it, Wissahickon for the last 20 years. You should have visited and sat in on some of these classes. Instead, you stayed and spouted generalizations at us. You ran on a platform that all administrators are not to be trusted, yet you do no research on your own. You tell Dr. Bond that he has to sell the idea to you. No, you have the responsibility to educate yourself on a subject so you can enter into an educated discussion with Dr. Bond and come up with an educated agreement. Ms. Mengel, you insinuate that team teaching requires more money. The responsibility is yours to put information on the table showing this is so. Without it, the community cannot evaluate it. It becomes only gossip you throw out into the air. You use terms without defining them. Back to basics, traditional class. Explain what these terms mean to you and how they will serve our children well in the larger crowded schools we are creating. During what years did you attend these traditional classes? What was the school size, class size, SAT scores, general scores from Iowa testing, etc.? How many students went to college? How many to manufacturing jobs that are no longer available? The responsibility is yours to prove your point with information, not with generalizations like if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Ms. Schur posed the 1980s team teaching in an unfavorable light without any data to back up her claims. For instance, the team teaching in the middle school was longer than 4 years. Both my children were in teams and they spanned 6 years at least. The experience for them was a positive one. They learned their basics of English, social studies, math, science, etc. How were they evaluated? with tests, written papers, projects, as had been done in previous grades and had been done in grades thereafter. In closing, you have repeated that you are products of traditional classes. During your times, this community was smaller, the schools were smaller, and they might have sufficed. As products of those classes, perhaps 50 in class size, as Mr. Mosey has mentioned previously, you have shown us that the traditional class did not give you the ability to research, organize your thoughts, rely on information and not hearsay. It did not teach you to form logical conclusions after reviewing your information. Thank you.
Karen Clark, Montgomery Township. I have a comment and then I have a suggestion. My comment has to do with the calendar, and I know you have 5 votes. However, if you are going to have a calendar and you are going to choose days that are going to be snow days, keep them, or don't choose days to be snow days. Have the whole calendar, and if you need days, pick them. You are telling us one thing, and then you are doing something else. And it's not just this time because we had a 30-inch blizzard. There have been several years where we've had to redo the calendar, and we haven't always used the days that have been specified for that. Do what you say and say what you do. My other suggestion has to do with the growth in this district, not only at the high school, but all through the schools, the elementary schools and so forth. Perhaps you should consider putting 6th grade and 7th grade back at Brook and Field, which will open up all your classrooms at the elementary schools, and they won't be overcrowded. Put 8th and 9th grade back at Penndale, and then you will have room in Pembroke and Penfield for 950 kids at each school. Penndale would have about 1,600, but now apparently that capacity is 1,640, and a couple years ago there were 1,700 kids there. Maybe you ought to go back to the way it was before, because the reason it was changed was to prove to everybody how crowded we were at the elementary schools, and we needed a second high school.
Thank you, Mrs. Clark. Sir, in the back? Oh, I'm sorry, ma'am.
He's getting old.
And then we'll come to someone else. Sir, Mr. Taylor up front.
Hi, I'm Marla Darcy from Upper Gwinnett, and I wanted to thank Dr. Bose for sending me the copy of the Code of Ethics, which I had requested. Thank you. And also, I just wanted to make a couple of comments about that. First of all, I wanted to know if you could kind of pinpoint when it will be on the agenda. I heard that it will not be in January, and I understand that your calendar is very, very crowded, but I would like to know when. Are we talking February? Also, there are 2 concerns. One is in the specific language, if anybody has a copy of it. At the bottom, there's a paragraph that reads...
Let me interrupt. This is related to a policy on the Code of Ethics. This policy is in a working process. It's been changed many times, and I'm sure what you have in your hands is not the current version.
This is just a citizen's input of what I would like to see changed.
All right, fine.
Is that all right?
But there's nothing, it's still a working document.
Oh, I understand
Okay.
that. So that's why I feel that input might be listened to.
So the document you're reading from may not be in anybody's hands right now.
I'm not sure that you have the policy that is current as circulated by the board
Can I show
to
it?
the board. I can see at a glance that is not the current. Much of the language there is not in the draft that the board is presently looking at.
Do you have
So
a copy of
perhaps-
the current?
No,
No,
we're not
it's still in
scheduled to
committee.
adjust it tonight, to discuss it tonight.
When are you discussing it?
It's still being
It
considered
may
by the
come in the work
board.
sessions in February or March. We're still working that out.
That will be in a private work session?
No,
so-
it'll be an open work session February or
Oh,
March.
okay.
Much of the language you have there is not in the current draft.
Okay, can I then say it just based on if the statement is in the current draft? Can I give an opinion just on one specific statement?
Sure.
Okay? If this is in your current copy, what I have here says, North Penn board members intend to create an educational environment that includes the development of respect for all individuals regardless of race, color, creed, and national origin. Okay, that's the statement I'm responding to. I would like to see it read, North Penn School Board members intend to create an educational environment that includes the development of respect for all individuals, period. Because when you begin to make a list, the list starts to exclude other people. And either you have respect for all individuals and all human beings, or you don't. So I don't see the need to be going into specifics of race, color, creed, national origin. I mean, it leaves out people of different lifestyles, or whatever way you want to put it. It just doesn't include everybody, and you have respect for everyone or you don't. So that's just what I'd like to put that in. And the other thing, on a more positive note, is the school district's gone through a lot of hard knocks lately, and I've been very pleased with the education that my children have been receiving, and I would like to see some sort of paper or something come about that would give recognition and spotlighting to teachers who are doing above and beyond what would be expected of them, and really stimulating children and really making education a lot of fun, a lot more exciting than it was when I was in school. And I can't believe some of the things that are going on. I think it's exciting, and I think we need to start to show our teachers that we do value them and we appreciate what they do. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Taylor.
I'm Bill Taylor from Lansdale, and first of all, on the same line, I can't find another word for the last meeting you had except to say that I was just amazed at the patience that was shown on balance. There were some causes for that patience to be used, which were painful, but on the whole, that's just an amazing exertion of patience. I can't find a better word for it. Having said that, I'll read something I've read to myself many times. I'm not happy with these words, so I'll read them as much as I've written them as I can, being very sure they could be improved or extended greatly. I haven't seen the world where bread earners experience universal daily tests, always alphanumerically graded. I know I am hired or fired or paid just enough to meet specs for economy's sake. Directly or indirectly, it is all OBE. If I don't make from my employer's income, I won't long be paid. My economic life is pass or fail. But this could just be quibbling over philosophical semantics. Our examples as persons are more than words, and what matters until we are forgotten. But printed words from or about us may live on. Right now, a few hundred words we've paid for do live and seem to prove that we, this voting community, will make you a winner if you pass a test tailored to your special advantage, then challenge others to score as well as you. No matter how the rest of the publication containing those few hundred words may suit any of us, I hope this board can make some statement to show our students we do value testing and grading integrity. I did wonder if this is overstating. When I asked my student for her view of a couple pages in reference, she read them, shrugged lightly, and did offer that the question should have been asked. It wasn't. When I asked if all this mattered, she said that on the whole it didn't, because once teachers get their jobs, they can't behave that way. I asked about superficial grading once an impression has been formed in the first week or two of a class. Her responding glance told me I was making less sense than the TV movie she was watching in prime time, and which, incidentally, I could never have handled on a date when I was her age. So we let it go, and I have yet to offer her a review of this. Some days later in conversation, my student did say the flick stunk.
Mr. Taylor, could you conclude your comments?
Or longer words to the same effect, period.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
This is just backup if somebody wants to know where all that came from. I've got copies and stuff.
Thank you. Okay, ma'am in the back.
Hello, my name is Sheila Rudnick. I'm from Montgomery Township. I'm concerned with the school calendar. I do appreciate you revising it. My son is in morning kindergarten, and every day you have 2 hours late, he has no school. And I'm just wondering if there's anything that the board is thinking about to do for these morning kindergarten students. He had school Monday, he had school Tuesday, and Wednesday there was no school for him.
One consideration that will attract attention as we plan for next year is when we do have a delay, you're right, it wipes out morning kindergarten. So we may consider switching morning and afternoon kindergartens whenever there's an early delay. But before we take serious consideration of that, we have to talk to parents of kindergartners or soon-to-be kindergartners to ask what kind of impact that might have. But that's one way to evenly distribute the impact of a school closing and not unequally put the lost time on the morning session.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Ma'am in the front?
Hi, Terry Rosenblatt from Montgomery Township. As a North Penn student and a Jewish American student, I'm concerned about your proposal to have school on Saturdays, because in the Jewish religion, working and going to school on Saturdays is not permitted. And I'm wondering how you're planning on dealing with that then, because there are a number of Jewish American students in North Penn High School and North Penn School District.
That hasn't been proposed. What I think you might have heard and might have caused confusion was the governor's reference to that.
Okay, is that being considered in the board then?
Not at this time. Not through my proposal to adjust the calendar.
Okay, I think that should be taken into consideration.
Thank you. Sir, Chuck?
Good evening. I'm Chuck Hammond from Montgomery Township. I have a couple of points I think I want to bring up this evening. One has to do with perhaps Mr. Clemens of getting a secondary timer, if you will, up there for board members. I think I've sat here for many a time in recent history here where we seem to be reiterating the same points over and over and over. Perhaps something like an 8 or a 10-minute time limit on the first go-around, and perhaps a 4 or 5 minute time limit on the second go-around. Because I think, quite honestly, after the first 2 or 3 minutes of any board member, you pretty much know which side of the fence they are on many of these issues. And I think with the interest of time for the board members, for the audience out here and everybody else, especially as crowded as our agendas are, the board may want to adopt such a policy where times can be spent on certain issues. If they involve a detailed discussion with some faculty members or something like this, perhaps we could get into a sidebar meeting or something like this that these things could be addressed. I think that might help to speed up some of the issues that go on during the board meetings. The second issue I want to get into, as most of you know, I was adamantly opposed to the second high school. I am very much, however, in favor of Dr. Bowe's proposal for the add-on structure. What that will do for us, Mr. Mosey, also, is the fact that that will eliminate much of the overhead we would have had with the second school. We should not encounter a second principal, associate principals, guidance counselors, psychiatrists, whatever else we run into with a second school. The overhead reduction on this should be tremendous. So again, in a connection with that secondary add-on building, I believe part of the proposal had to do with a 4-story building. What I'm suggesting on that, again, is the fact that maybe we may want to consider putting 8 more classrooms, 2 per floor, that we could again get into one grade structure being in that building. If we took 8 classrooms out of the existing building surrounding the cafeteria, we could perhaps expand the size of the cafeteria and not have to even think about putting a secondary cafeteria in the other building. We could make that strictly a teaching facility and only a teaching facility. Perhaps if we need such things to support this grade level, like computer labs or something like this, great idea. But as far away as we can stay from theaters, auditoriums, gymnasiums, what have you, all the overhead type things in this building, the more that adds to the size of the structure, the more that adds to the cost of it. If you can keep it as a teaching facility with only a classroom type atmosphere, with as less traffic back and forth to the existing structure as possible, I think that would be a great point. Also, again, school calendars, it seems like every year we go into this discussion with school calendars. We set up what the tentative...
You need to wrap up, Mr. Hammond.
Huh?
You need to wrap up.
Okay. One question I do have about teaming. Should there be some way that we can look at grade point comparisons to 4 or 5 years ago within North Penn and compare them against teaming and compare North Penn against other school districts to see if this teaming concept works once and for all? We seem to discuss this also constantly.
We'll note that, we'll get that comment to Dr. Bond, and we'll ask him to get back to you.
Good deal.
Okay? Ma'am?
Good evening. Linda Abram from Upper Gwinnett. I'd like to support Dr. Bond's recommendation to continue teaming for the 7th and 8th graders. In a society where teamwork is critical to the success of most professions, what better way to prepare our children for the real world than to provide them with a team approach at this, a critical stage in their development? Our size in the district is also a concern for many. Teaming allows children to be known personally by their team, and those who have difficulties or strengths are identified as such and supported in their educational needs. Teaming is a concept used in many areas of our society and is not a new concept. An interdisciplinary approach such as this provides a look at the total child. It allows the team to meet the needs of varying abilities. It allows for the various subjects to overlap and complement each other, a scenario more similar to real life. It allows for materials and supplies to be better utilized. And with our hands-on science program being an integral part of the district, this issue seems very relevant. Having worked in a team during my entire professional career, I feel this is the best direction for us to go in. It may never be a truly measurable issue. It is one that is intangible yet extremely valuable. Let us trust our administrators and leaders who tell us that it works and that it's needed now in North Penn. With regards to Dr. Bowe's concept, I'm pleased that we are finally ready to spend an entire work session on our facilities. My dilemma is understanding why it took this long to determine that this was a need in North Penn. We need to do something to house the children, regardless of what numbers we look at, and I hope we'd expedite matters as quickly as possible. With regards to the middle school boundaries, where do I begin? Why was this map showed to the committee at such a late date if this was a point you wanted to start with? If the committee were aware of this as a focus, our work could have perhaps started differently. We, however, did what we were asked to do. We reviewed this map. We looked at numbers, the housing starts, municipalities, the townships, the elementary schools, the children. We came up with a plan, and at the 11th hour, it seems our work may be for naught. Committee work in this district has been lauded as an important component for our present and our future. It will become more and more difficult to gain respect for committee work if it is undermined like this. Whatever is decided, whichever map is chosen, I'm concerned about how the situation was handled. Thank you.
Thank you. Not to the board. You could give it to Ken Weir, to the board secretary, that he could distribute to the board later.
Okay, it was primarily for Dr. Bowes.
Bill Totten, I'm from Montgomery Township. What I've just given to Mr. Weir is for distribution to the board and everybody sitting up here. I wasn't able to make the meeting the other night because my daughter was at the doctor, but I watched last night and I, in some ways, was happy that some progress appears being made. But most of all, I was very concerned about the approach and the information that Dr. Bowes has been working with. What you're going to end up seeing is that, you know, there seems to be a misimpression I heard from a couple board members as to what we saw in the election. It was referred to as a referendum. That election was not intended as a referendum. What I've done basically, and I have a few other copies also, if we looked at the election results and we see that in the North Penn School District there are 26,750 registered Republicans, about 11,940 registered Democrats. If we look at the results, and some of the board members are now looking at it, there was definitely no consensus of opinion here. It was definitely a case of where the endorsed candidates were, those folks won. If you look at the figures on the Republican side, the 5 Republican candidates on the Republican side averaged 10,062 votes on the Republican side. On the Democratic side, the three Democrats, who were vastly, obviously, you know, the underdogs, they averaged 7,806 votes. Not a bad margin when you consider that the Republicans outweighed them 2.2 to 1. So in my mind, there was not a clear referendum here, and Dr. Bose, unfortunately, has, I gotta watch what I say here. I think he's been working with what he thought was valid interpretations of what happened in the election, but as you folks look at those numbers, I think we have to agree that the numbers do not bear out that the second high school should be a dead issue. Folks ran saying they were going to vote against it. I can understand voting against it, but please, if in fact there's going to be this open session in February where you discuss the Penmont plan, as one board member said the other night, it got some support. Well, heck, if we look at these election results, that second high school has a heck of a lot of support also. I think it needs to at least be considered. Dr. Bose has worked, you know, I was hoping for more since we were anticipating his response. To me, it's another Band-Aid, you know, and we're talking about how these schools,
Sir, could you start concluding your comments?
Yeah, I will. Okay, thank you. It seems to me we're taking a warehousing approach to the students. We're not approaching what type of quality education and extracurricular activities. It's nice to say we will only have one administrator, one assistant principal. I go the other way and say we will have 2 valedictorians, we will have 2 football captains, we will have 2 homecoming queens.
Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, and I think those things carry weight. Thanks, Doctor.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Ma'am? A lot tonight.
Hi, my name is Karen Costello, and I'm from Upper Gwinnett Township. In light of your evaluation of the team teaching approach in the middle school, I'd like to make a couple of comments. And I'd like to point out, my daughter's in the 7th grade, so I've only had a limited experience with it so far, but I'd like to point out a couple of very positive experiences that have come out of it as far as we're concerned. And also, my first item, and I'm not sure if this was gone over the other night because I came in at the end of Dr. Bond's presentation, but first item I'd like to mention that comes out of the team teaching also is the fact that physically the students are grouped in an area of the building. Their 5 core courses all take place in one physical location of the building. So one of the things that accomplishes is, number one, the students don't have to be running back and forth across these large crowded buildings for every single class that they're taking. Number two, it gives them more time to perhaps talk to their team teachers between classes. And number three, it alleviates crowding in the hallways, which is only going to be getting worse as the student population increases. So you only have the large number of children in the hallways when they have to go to their other non-core courses. The second thing I'd like to mention is the fact that my daughter had a field trip this year, and that was done based on her team. And this field trip was an interdisciplinary field trip where they incorporated literature, science, and social studies, and it was a very informative field trip. I can't begin to imagine how a field trip could even take place without a team approach there. The third thing I would like to mention is a very personal situation where, I don't know if this is the microphone, I'm sorry. I was wondering what that noise was. Okay.
We were too. We were.
I just realized what this was. I didn't know what that was. So I am a technical person. I teach computers, but I've never seen one of these before. Okay. My third item is in reference to her algebra class. She's in the algebra class, which is 2 years ahead math-wise. And this algebra class is scheduled 8th period, which led to be a very stressful situation because many times there's activities that take place at the end of the day, and she was involved in sports, and for away games they had to leave and she had to miss this class. And that was very stressful. I'm sure we all remember our algebra days and how stressful that could be. One of the things that came out of this, first of all, we were able to make some adjustments for this initially, but as a team, the team itself worked out adjusting the schedule and actually switching that algebra class with another period so that these kids didn't have to miss that, because the other types of courses are much easier for the children to makeup on their own than algebra is. And something like that could never have been accomplished without a team approach. So in my opinion, these are three very, very positive things that have come out of the team concept.
Ma'am, could you conclude?
Okay. In conclusion, I would just ask you, when you're judging the team concept versus traditional, as Dr. Bond said the other night, right now, and as I understood, there are no additional costs involved. And that he can
conclude
and that he can incorporate honors. Please ask the same questions of both traditional and team teaching. Okay, please ask those and make sure that when you make your decision that traditional can't handle those same problems that were brought up the other night. And I think that's the case in a lot of the situations, such as communication. Okay, thank you. My little drawback.
Ma'am in the back, and then we'll come over to that side. Don.
June Yolkowski, Townmenson Township. As most of you know, I've had some serious concerns about the operation of the base program, and unfortunately, my concerns are increasing rather than decreasing. I'm concerned both about the financial arrangement with the base provider, which in my opinion is simply ludicrous, and with the safety of the children. As far as safety is concerned, it's pretty ironic that that should be a concern when this program was set up, so children would have a safe environment until their parents got done work. The current price of $17 a day to rent these schools is less than 20% of what a nonprofit organization that charges an admission fee would pay to rent one of our elementary school cafeterias. It's not even 5% what other commercial users are charged that also charge admission fees to rent our schools. They pay $480 to rent an elementary school cafeteria, and the present $17 is just a ridiculously small amount of that. The $17 was set up by Mr. Wood based only on our utility cost. I don't know any of you who own businesses, as I know many of you do on the board, who would rent one of your facilities on which you're paying a steep mortgage for simply the cost of the utilities. And frankly, since that $17 also includes administrative help, knowing what we pay our administrators, I don't think $17 would buy too many minutes of any one of their time. I'm also increasingly concerned about the safety of the children. When I ask if the base workers are in the kitchen preparing snacks or cleaning up during the time the children are at base, nobody can give me an answer. What I'm told is once our people leave, we don't know what's going on. When I asked how the children at North Wales a few years ago got into the gym where some ceiling tiles were damaged, when I asked if the base worker was with them, nobody knew. When I asked how the doors were damaged at Inglewood last year, nobody knew. In November of this year, we had 3 incidents of vandalism to school property during base. 2 of them involved broken windows. At first, I assumed the windows were broken with children playing baseball outside.
Mrs. Olkowski, could you start to conclude your
Yes.
remarks? Your 3 minutes.
Okay. I then found that instead, children were playing kickball in the cafeteria. The same ball that broke the window could easily have damaged a child. Instead, it hit a child in the face.
Mrs. Olkowski, you really need to conclude.
All right. Well, I just would ask this board, please, to give serious consideration to reviewing both the cost factors and if the present arrangement does provide for the safety of the children.
Thank you, Mrs. Olkowski. Steve?
My name is Steve Long. I'm from Montgomery Township, and I too have some concerns about the base program. Back in October, I had written a letter to Dr. Bowes expressing some of my safety concerns over the current provider, and I believe Dr. Bose or his office had responded in writing indicating that the base program would be put on the agenda for January. In December, I had written a confirming letter, just confirming that it would indeed be placed on the January agenda, and got no response. This last action meeting in December, I know there was discussions about busy work sessions in January, and I know several members were concerned about including the base program in the work session in January, but as we know, it was certainly not included, and I don't see that it's included tonight for discussion. We are in January. The base program is not on the work session. It's not on an action agenda. It's my understanding that if there's no action taken this month, the existing contract for the provider is automatically renewed. If that being correct, I know that all board members and Dr. Bose knows and are aware of various incidents leading up to the loss of several children while entrusted to the care of the current provider. One of those includes my own son, who was left abandoned outside in the snow. In these instances, the current base provider also failed to report the incidents to the school district, which I believe they are required to do by their contract. I know there's nothing that I can do about the base program at this point. In my opinion, there is reasons enough to discuss the bid process in January. I'd like to ask all board members one question. Are you prepared to take responsibility in the event of another mishap due to the care of the current provider? I would hope you are. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Long. I think the gentleman over here had his hand up first, then we'll come over to the lady over on that side.
Gary Robinson, Hatfield Township. I'll start on a lighter note this evening for a change. I'm very delighted and encouraged to hear that Mrs. Scher and Mr. Kelly are making progress on working towards an accounting manual for the district. That's the best news I've heard in a long, long time. And I have two questions, and perhaps the board can have them for the next session. I'm curious, and I see in your agenda for tonight, number 5, concerns part of that. What progress toward replacing the solicitor is being made? And related to that, what are the cost comparisons and implications if you use different law firms for different legal areas, such as labor issues, financial issues, litigation, whatever crops up? That's one question. Second question is what progress, if any, is being made on the disposition of the whole tract? And as I had mentioned previously, I think if the property were set up for sale and you get bids, instead of wasting money on another appraisal, find out what you can really sell it for. We'll tell you what the value of the property is. And lastly, I have a comment related to the petition that I was involved in filing with the school district. I think that the public ought to know that that petition merely asks the court to direct the school district to provide access to financial records which we asked for and had not received. Statements here in the board and other people had stated that such records that we're asking for, in fact, don't exist, or that we're asking for special reports. I think that the real issue is some of the things that should exist as standard financial records don't exist, thereby previous board members were saying that I was asking for special reports. And lastly, the public should know that the solicitor for the school district, in their response to our petition, states in paragraph 32, the petition should be dismissed because it falls outside the applicable statute of limitations period and because it is barred by the doctrine of laches. Statute of limitations, I guess after, what that means is, if you ask for public records, I guess after 3 years you can't go to the courthouse, you can't come to the school district. Public records are not going to be available for the public after a period of time. So this is a letter I wish to be distributed.
Okay, the board secretary would be happy to make copies and distribute it to the board. Thank you, Mr. Robinson. I believe there was a question over here on this side. Ma'am?
Good evening. My name is Cindy Manis from Tomanson Township. I was here on Tuesday night and listened to a rather healthy debate on team teaching. I would suggest, though, that we're all looking for the same thing, which is academic excellence. Dr. Bond provided this board with all of the answers that he had and could find from previous tapes that he reviewed. He did the necessary research to support this methodology, but there still, in my opinion, seems to be two open issues. One that was raised by this board was teacher accountability, and the other was a lack of understanding of the process of team teaching by the board. I would suggest that teacher accountability is a separate issue from the team teaching educational method. I would agree that this district and all school districts do in fact need teachers to be accountable for their work, the same as it is in industry. I have specific goals and objectives which I'm measured upon, and I would suggest that teachers do need that same accountability. What I heard from Dr. Bond is that this is in fact what he has planned. He is planning to institute a measurement process to measure the results of this style of teaching, and his willingness to work with this board seemed very clear and unwavering to me. Clearly, Dr. Bond believes in this team teaching approach. The lack of understanding process is another matter. Possibly because we have not had an effective leader in secondary education to educate board members and the general public on what team teaching is all about. I don't know the reason, but now clearly we do have someone in place who is willing to educate all of us on the team teaching method. Just as industry is evolving and we are becoming part of a global economy, I would suggest that education is evolving. When the whole language program was introduced by this district, my first child had just completed learning to read the traditional method. I was not sure about the whole language approach. My child was in the guinea pig grade level. So I spoke to my building principal, who handed me a shopping bag full of research. She handed me studies, which I read. I contacted librarians who work within the universities with people who want to become teachers. I asked them about this approach. I did my homework, and while I was still leery of the process, I put my faith into the educators who know more than I do about the educational process of the children. They are trained in this district, and in my opinion, they are the cream of the crop. I also put my faith into the administrators who know and did the research long before I did. I'm grateful we live in a district where educators must prove their methodology or teaching process, but where better ways of teaching can be adopted. My analogy here is one of educating yourself on this issue. Several board members said they had scheduling conflicts, although they were attempting to get into the schools. I would suggest that you go by yourselves. Go into the schools, talk to the teachers, learn.
Could you conclude
Yes,
your
okay.
comment?
Finally, in conclusion, I would suggest that if Dr. Bond and the administration believes in this, it is the best way to educate our children, then we should go with his recommendation. He has more educational experience, certainly, than I do, or most of us in this room. And I'm suggesting that we give Dr. Bond a vote of confidence by voting for team teaching. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Judith Thomas from Hatfield Township. I will try to be brief. Two subjects I would like to approach. One is team teaching and the other is the proposed new building. It scared me a little bit on Tuesday night that team teaching was going to come up for a vote when some of the people who were going to vote on it didn't fully understand the process. So luckily there is another month. This can be made up. I think people have time to educate themselves, because I wouldn't want anybody to vote on it before they really fully know what is happening. And I would like, I always bring this up, I think almost every meeting I speak, but I would like to see the lines a little bit not drawn so hard in the sand, that there are still the two groups against each other before the election, after the election. They want team teaching, we don't want it. So I would like to see that there is an open-minded approach on everybody's side, and it's not a political issue. It's not just because our party, we are sticking together on this. I think now the discussions can be open and open-minded. As far as the proposed new building, added to the high school, I very much would like to hope that indeed there is a new cafeteria visit and a new gymnasium, because I think physical education is just as important part of a student growing up in teen years as the academic excellence. I highly value education, but we must not forget about sports, which are part of a character building experience. It's not just there for fun, it has a very important function. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Sandler?
Good evening. Ellen Allen from Hatfield Township. I too wanted to talk about teaming, but it's probably a different kind. The kind that we have here at North Penn. We have a contract coming up. I came in late tonight. We have a number of contracts coming up. I have a tendency to use analogies when I look at groups of people, and I look at North Penn like a wheel, a big old wooden wheel, and we're rolling along, and we've hit a lot of boulders, we've hit a lot of stones, we've been jostled a little bit. Some of the spokes in the wheel have fallen out. We have a need to maintain some of our spokes. We have 4 good ones. It's a real strong team. They have background, they have information. There's nobody who can cite policies, issues, and answers that they can provide that not many in the room else can draw up from their memory banks. There's something to be said for experience, background, information, things that none of us could ever draw up. We need these people, and I'm just asking that when a consideration is made, that this be a real strong one. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions or comments? Ma'am? Mrs. Stewart.
Mary Ann Stewart, Upper Gwinnett. I'm not quite sure if I will get my point across clearly. I guess I'm concerned with what I feel to be a growing attitude amongst members of the board and anywhere for what we have here. Ellen did use an appropriate analogy, the spokes in the wheel, and part of that wheel is the community. You ask for task forces and convene parent groups to study issues, and they come up with solutions to the problems that you have at hand, and those solutions are disregarded. Days, weeks, years, or almost a year spent on one task force that I was on, and I feel like there is a total disregard for not only some of the people who work for this district, but for some of the parents in this district as well. And it is, I feel like it's just growing and growing. I have been overwhelmed tonight by what I feel we are losing sight of the importance that individuals have in this district. I'm sorry I'm not explaining myself as well as I would like, but I just want to, I feel as a board, you are asking this community to rally around you and the administrators to rally around you, and I'm not sure that once we do, that you will accept us. And I don't know how you can, I mean, you want us to follow behind you. You want to be our leaders. And I think we would all like to have that. But then you cut us off at the knees when they come with a proposal and you just don't like it. Studies are done, facts are presented to you, and because they don't seem to fall into the pattern that you expect, it's like, we don't need it. Sorry, we don't believe that. I'm sorry I'm not making myself very clear, but I'm just concerned with the personnel matter that we have in front of us. we can't even, you've moved it to personnel instead of addressing the issue. I'm just, it concerns me deeply at what direction we're heading. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Okay, well, we'll come back for round two. Mr. Robinson?
This is on a different subject. I've been watching it for quite some time, and it is another societal and political issue. Unfortunately, I feel that team teaching is merely another catch term for OBE, outcome-based education. I think it's a dangerous and slippery slide. It is unfortunate, but it is also true. People are not equal, intellectually or physically. We're not all Olympic athletes. We're not all Einsteins. And the ultimate goal and objective is a very dangerous one of OBE, to try and make everyone equal. I think it's unfortunate that so many teachers have sold into the rhetoric of everyone must excel. Unfortunately, some people that are smart are lazy. Some people that aren't so smart are very aggressive and go on to college and become wonderful, constructive individuals to society. We need to go back and place the emphasis on basic education and grades, specific grades based on performance, not that everyone is equal, pass or fail. Thank you.
Very good. Really want to try to wrap it up. The last two, in the front and then in the back. Come on up. Those are going to be the last two comments for tonight.
Good evening. My name's Sandy Core.
Sandy, I'm sorry.
It's okay, Tom. Burgwinna Township. Just a quick comment, and I don't know if it really might help the person that spoke earlier about why she didn't feel that she was really appreciated by the board. I think maybe one of the problem is that we have a new board sitting here coming from different focuses, the administrators. Maybe you're not all coming from different same angles. When you sign up for the task force and focus groups and stuff like that, it's not always the board that's making the selections. I still think that there's a lot of divided parties here. Even though the election's over, there's still a lot of dividing down through the middle. We become, administrators know who we are, we know who they are, we really know how each other stands, and I think that has a lot to do with the selection process and, you know, the decisions that are made. Really what I got up here for, I know you're going over district boundaries and all that kind of good stuff. The problem that I have, my daughter will either be going to Pembroke or Penndale. Either selection really doesn't bother me. The thing that bothers me, we live in a development. The children now currently walk to the schools. For them to walk, they have to cross 2 railroad tracks, and it's a long walk through the 2 developments. So rather than walk through the developments, they currently walk across the set of railroad tracks through an abandoned field that's had numerous complaints of homeless people, and then they have to go back and cross 2 other sections of railroad tracks and then cross over Hancock to get to either of the schools or, well, if you go to Penndale. It's a very serious safety issue for me. I've brought it up twice before to the board when we've gone through this. Several of my neighbors have. It's never been addressed. Absolutely, without a doubt, I do not want my daughter to have to walk to Penndale. And I really want you folks to take a serious look at where these kids are going to be walking from, what they have to walk through, what they have to walk around, and take a look, a real serious look, at what these neighborhoods look like before you make these decisions. It's not just as easy as a map and this is how they go.
Thank you. Okay, our last comment for the night, Mrs. Thomas.
I'm really sorry. I hope I'm not wasting everybody's time, Judith Thomas again, but I cannot just let Mr. Robinson's comments go unanswered because I feel that this is a dangerous thought to leave everybody to go home with. And I didn't want to make my previous talk longer, but I did want to talk about competition versus cooperation. I think this is a dangerous idea to leave everybody believe that this is what team teaching is about, making a homogeneous mass of the students. This is not what team teaching is about. Please, again, educate yourself and look into it. Team teaching is bringing the maximum out of every student to their best potential. It doesn't mean that the best student has to stoop to the level of the lowest one. Mrs. Mango brought up this idea at the last meeting that a bright student shouldn't waste her time or his time helping the weak students. That is not what team teaching is about. But should this occur in the school, that indeed a bright student would help a student who is weaker, I don't see the big tragedy in it. I think sometimes the best way to learn is when you teach somebody. And I am standing in front of you as an example of this, because I did this in all my 12 years of education. I was usually the one who got the ideas first. I'm not bragging, but I was bored and I went and helped other students, and I learned better what I know now. But this is not what team teaching is about. But I think I would prefer cooperation versus competition. And sports are the way to go when you want to compete. That's exactly why you need sports in school, because you can live out your ideas of competition there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, this concludes our audience of citizens for the evening. As soon as I find my agenda. We will now move on to item 4, the superintendent's report.
Mr. President, members of the board, it is recommended that the board approve, according to its own policy, the waiver of tuition status for students whose names are on file in the Office of Special Education and Student Services, and that you do that in accordance with the policy. And these students, as I've learned, are all students whose families are acquiring residences in our school district and want to start in North Penn rather than transfer when the occupancy occurs.
So moved.
Okay, motion made. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion made by Ms. Krieger, second by Mr. Allen. Any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
The next recommendation is to seek your approval for a transportation service contract as is referenced in your materials.
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. Mengel. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Schilling. Questions or comments on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
And the next one is one that I know will not be easy for the board and the community itself, but it deals with the consideration of the recommendation from me that we adjust the school calendar for the current school year in an effort to make up some of the lost days because of closing due to inclement weather. And I'm not suggesting that this has been done lightly or flippantly, and it certainly recognizes that Mother Nature has been unusually harsh already, and we are not yet 1/3 through the winter. So we have the potential already now of reaching into the last week of June if we don't make up some of these days earlier. And those days are recommended in the document and reference you have before you. And without any further introduction by me, I would simply recommend that you consider accepting this revision.
So moved.
Okay, motion's made by Mr. Hill, second by Mrs. Krieger. Questions and comments on the motion?
Mr. Clements.
Mrs. Scher.
As you know, we've had these discussions. I'll be as quick as I can. My concerns regarding the Easter break and the comments I made during the last work session seems to have taken my concerns to a far greater level than I intended. I in fact, did ask Dr. Bose to look immediately into recovery of some days through the rescinding of the calendar, although I agree with others that that isn't a popular thing to do, but we're facing extreme circumstances again, and I foresaw a release of student time at the end of the year if we continued as we were. However, I have had enough time to review the statistics on the attendance, both in staff and students for the spring break, and as we approach the 4-day weekend period, we received very pathetic attendance that had me wondering if it was even worth the electricity and heat to open the buildings on those days. With that in mind, I am simply requesting that a minor adjustment be made so that we provide we maintain April 4th, providing therefore a 4-day weekend for the families to visit grandmother or other sisters or what have you, and hope for better compliance with the rescinding of the 8th, and also some consideration of the fact that this is done with some thought and sensitivity to their plans. That would only be replaced by a school attendance on June 14th, and I would challenge anyone to find records that would say that attendance on April 4th on a holiday, as a holiday, a spring break holiday being rescheduled, would be better than the attendance that we've seen in the past on June 14th, and certainly that's been a traditional school day for us for a while. Yet we haven't really had early closures to our schools recently, so I don't think that that's that extreme. So it's one minor change, one minor day at the end of the year. I'm not pushing us into the end of June, and yet at the same time it gives some thought that these were supposed to be maintained holidays, and it was a compacted calendar to begin with.
Okay, so make sure I understand you. You're asking if we could make April 4th a holiday again, or keep it as a holiday.
Keep it the way it was
instead of
scheduled.
making it a school day, but then just add it on at the end and make a school day the 14th.
June that would be
14th.
our last
Right,
day right
right.
now, and then the snow days
Right.
that are left. That leaves us with 3 of the 5 snow days that were originally scheduled to
All right.
begin with.
All right, let's try to go with one at a time. Mr. Hill, would you be willing to amend your motion to instate what Mrs. Scher has requested?
No, I don't believe I will. We discussed this in so much detail the other night and reviewed it, and I don't want to get into the debate again, but let me just suffice to say that I would not like to amend my motion.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments on the motion?
How do I make my motion?
Mr. Clemens.
Pardon?
I'm
Mr.
looking at
Mosey.
a green sheet here. See if I'm reading this correctly. We're going to have classes on April 4th and 8th? Or we're spring
Yeah,
off.
that's Holy
Then in the
Thursday.
statement, it says schools will be closed Friday, April 4th. Is this a misprint?
The first was a typo. We have a revision in the packet tonight.
Oh, okay.
The audience,
We're talking April 5th to the 8th then.
It was an error.
the audience has a corrected and a revised sheet which says schools will be closed Friday, April 5th, and that is also at your place, but it is not the original that you received in the mail last week.
Okay, so just so I understand correctly, we will have classes the 4th and the 8th. And
Yes.
the 5th is going to be closed.
Yes.
Thank you.
Right. Any other questions or comments? Okay, back to Mrs. Scher.
Okay. I'd like to direction as to how I also present this motion. As I said, it didn't matter the 4th or the 9th. I felt that that's Holy Thursday. We have a large Catholic population here, and in consideration, since the idea was to try to provide the 4
Right.
days rather than lose all the staff time that occurs on those holidays.
Right, okay, I'll turn to our solicitor for some help on this one.
So they can both be.
You need to make a motion to amend the motion that's on the table.
I understand
that.
Motion to amend the motion that's on the table to make one minor revision of April 4th as a holiday, and thereby placing the last day of school minus any future snow days at June 14th.
Okay, there's a motion, and does everyone understand the motion?
I'm not sure.
Before we try to get a second.
There's already a motion.
I need a motion, I need a second.
Right, but she needs a second to her motion to amend the original motion. Is there a second to Mrs. Scher's motion?
Second.
Okay, there is a second. Okay.
There can be no debate on the amendment. You put the amendment to a vote now.
Okay. Hearing our solicitor, all those in favor of the amendment, say aye.
No, you're in favor of allowing the motion to be amended. That's basically what you're, just so
All
it's
those
clear
in favor
what you're
of
doing.
allowing the original motion to be amended, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay.
Want to vote?
No.
I heard two at first. Were there more than two?
Were there more
I thought
than,
you said,
there was more than 2 ayes?
I don't know, did you, I don't know. Say
I
nay?
said I'd think about it.
I heard Vicki and Donna vote to amend the motion. Did anyone else?
No. Motion does not carry, so it brings us back to the original motion. The original motion is to leave the recommendation from our superintendent as is printed. Are there any questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
Ayes have it. We have our new schedule.
We need to break now for changing the tape. Thank you.
We need to take a break?
2 minutes? 2 minutes in place?
2 minutes in place.
Let's try it 2 minutes in place, okay? Ready?
You sit over there for a second and I lose you.
Okay, we're ready to reconvene. I believe we are now on item 4D. I'll turn it back over to our superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. President. It is recommended that the board approve awarding low bids for sports equipment for spring sports as per the reference in your packet.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Krieger, second by Mr. Hill. Questions or comments on the motion?
Question, are
Yes.
these items that were budgeted in last year's budget?
Yes, they are, Mr. Allen.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Hey, Dennis, is it coming from the general fund or from the bond expenditure?
These expenditures come from the general fund.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it.
The next item to consider is personnel. There are 3 professional appointments, two on the bottom of BA2 and one at the top of BA3. I'll recommend you consider all 3 as one item.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Allen to consider all 3 in one motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Mosey. Question or comments on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Ayes have it.
The next personnel consideration is the appointment of support staff. There are 14 such individuals to be appointed from page BA3 through BA4.
So moved.
BA3 through BA4?
Okay, there's been a motion made. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Hill, second by Mr. Mosey. Let's just clarify exactly what we're all voting on. What page does it go to?
BA3 at the bottom to the end of BA4.
I'm showing the support staff on BA6.
Yeah, so am I.
Dr. Bose, support staff is on BA6.
Resignation.
Oh, I see it's beginning, your nominations.
These are appointments.
Okay.
We're
Okay,
doing
let's
3
make-
and 4.
We're basically going from the middle of BA3 to the bottom of BA4. Does everyone agree with that? Any questions or comments on the motion?
Yes, Mr. Clemens?
Yes.
Dr. Bose, what is a theme reader, please?
Somebody who reads themes. For English classes to assist the teacher in grading the themes.
Now, that was eliminated in 1990. When was it reinstated?
It was a budget discussion last year, and as a result of the budget discussion, money was placed in the budget for the positions.
Any other questions or comments on the motion?
How much money is in that budget for theme readers?
You know, I'm not sure I know that.
There's $5,000.
Well,
I didn't recall.
Okay.
How many theme readers do we have on staff now, Fred?
Well, these are the first ones that are being recommended, and I would assume that we'll probably hire extra people just because of the fact that it's a sort of a casual kind of thing, and we'll need to have people available for whenever the work is there to be done. So we'll probably have more people than we use, or we'll probably use people less than other people based on their availability.
So this is almost like an on-call type of thing or substitute type of thing. When you need them, you call
Yeah,
them.
the second half of the year, the requirements are much more intensive in terms of the writing projects and all, so that as the teachers get into that, then the need becomes much greater.
Fred, I have to ask, because theme readers are actually replacing the teacher as far as reading through the reports and then assigning a grade, what is the background? What is the criteria that's there for hiring the theme reader who is providing this educational role?
These people all have a significant background in terms of their ability to read themes, and I think several of them are even certified teachers as well. They've been interviewed by my assistant as well as the supervisor of English. These people work along with the teachers. They're not involved in the grading. The teachers themselves do the grading. These people mark the themes and then hand it back to the teachers, and the teachers review it, and then they're the ones responsible for the grading.
But the whole purpose of the theme reader is to save the time of the teacher from reading the document, which means the teacher themselves isn't experienced necessarily with the content. Otherwise, you wouldn't need a theme reader.
The teacher saves a significant amount of time with the theme reader doing the work that they'll be doing.
Any other questions or comments? Call for the question, or unless you have something significant.
Well, no, Mr. Cummings, except that bunching everybody together, if I have a specific problem philosophically with these positions, I have to vote against all of them if we take them all at one time.
No, identify that one, and I would be gladly separate by recommendations
Okay, I would
for
like
your
to do that.
convenience.
I would like to do that, please. The 4 theme reader positions, I would appreciate if we.
Okay, you would like separated out
Separate those out.
the 4 theme readers. All right. Let's see.
That's BA3 and BA4.
I'll agree to have my motion amended to have those 4 separate, those names separated.
We're not waiting till next.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. I don't remember who seconded the motion.
I did. No, I think you did.
If I did, I'll accept what Don.
Thank you,
Dottie,
Mr.
who
Allen.
seconded it?
Pat Mosey.
I
Pat
did,
Mosey
thank
did.
you.
You agree, Pat?
Yes.
Okay, we're going to separate these into 2 separate motions. Let's all make sure we see where the 4 theme readers are. We have 2 on page BA3, and we have 2 on page BA4. Is everybody clear and understand what we're voting for? We'll vote first for the support staff as listed, with the exception of the theme readers. Everybody understand? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Okay, a separate motion. Do we need another motion on that, Mr. Roos?
Yes,
Okay.
it's a separate motion.
Is there a motion to accept the 4 theme readers as listed?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Hill. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Allen. Questions or comments on this motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Ayes have it. Moving on.
On page BA5, recommend you accept the resignation of 1 professional staff and 6 support staff.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Ms. Krieger, second by Mr. Mosey. That takes us to the bottom of page BA5. Does everyone agree?
Yes.
Any questions or comments?
Question regarding Mr. Mosmano's position. Who's filling those responsibilities? Has he actually left, or is he still here till the end of this?
He's here till this Friday, Mrs. Shar, and in the meantime, Mr. Nyman has been working on job descriptions for the other board-approved positions in last year's budget, at which time Mr. Schmidt will advertise them.
Okay, and when
In the
will we-
meantime, Robert Brody and Mr. Nyman are both really going to split Mike's jobs.
When will we be notified of his departure? of his intended departure.
Oh, I'm sorry, he gave 2 weeks' notice.
Any other questions or comments?
Only dealing with how we're dealing with that. You said that there will be some work done, picked up,
Yes.
and,
Okay, any other questions? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Moving on.
We're on page BA6 now, and there are 14 salary changes being recommended from the top of BA6 through the top of BA8. There are 14.
So moved. Moved by Mr. Hill. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Allen. Questions or comments on the motion?
Yes, Mr. Clemens, I have a question for Mr. Schmidt in regards to the library processor salary, $12,628. I'd like to know what that computes to per hour, from $9.75 to what? To constitute $12,678 a year.
I don't know what that computes to offhand, but I would tell you that those salaries are arrived at by virtue of working through the process that we have in place for secretarial salaries. We have a secretarial salary schedule, and that's in accordance with that.
How many hours a week is that, Mr. Schmidt?
It's probably a 7-hour day, maybe a 180-day kind of thing. I'm not quite sure. I can find that out for you.
It's 180 day,
It would be 180 days.
so it's a Monday through Friday position.
It is a Monday through Friday
Okay.
position.
And Fred, what is the difference between the pay scales that we go by hour at the elementary, and then when they move from elementary to middle school, that they go under a salary?
It's the amount of time to spend at the elementary school. It's a very small amount of time, so they're paid on an hourly basis.
Does that also then mean that once they reach the salary, they then go under the district's benefit plan?
The salary has nothing to do with the
Okay.
benefit plan. It's the number of hours that they work.
Right, but does that make it, for the elementary level library processor, would they have been receiving benefits, or is there a change in whether or not they are receiving benefits?
If they make a work over 900 hours a year, they're entitled to benefits.
Maybe we should be a little bit more specific. Is the position that is listed on BA7 a position that will also include health benefits?
We said 180 days, so I assume that.
Yes, it will.
That will have to, and, so under the elementary, it really all depends, that some
At the
maybe.
elementary level, the library processors don't spend as much time as the secondary.
So they don't generally have the benefits included. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Make sure we know where we're going all the way down to the top of BA8, correct? Elaine Waterfield is the last we're voting for as that group, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, it is through. I'd just like to say right now that it's going to be a hard one to vote to support this, because I'm going to miss Elaine Waterfield at Penfield when I make my phone calls to that office. I looked and I was going to say, I think I've got to talk to Dr. Sugar about this one, but I'll let you have her.
Thank you. And start to call others.
That's right. I'll be making calls in there, and I'll certainly be glad to hear a familiar voice.
Any other questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Moving on.
Mr. President, on BA8, 4D4, there is one leave of absence being recommended for your approval.
So moved.
Second. Moved by Ms. Krieger, second by Mr. Schilling. I'm a little confused. You said 4D4?
4D4, right.
4D.
I'm confused.
Actually, it's 4A.
It's 4A.
You've got the upper four. We've got 4.
You're doing okay, Dr. Bowes.
And we caught it.
Okay, we're on 4A. Questions or comments on the motion?
I have a question, Mr. President. Fred, I see that her sabbatical is going to be from February to June of this year. Will that come off the, I understand teachers ought to take a yearly, a sabbatical for a year. Will this reduce the number of months that she's allowed to take?
She has been out for the first half of the year on sabbatical and had expected to return.
Okay,
But
so she's just continuing it? Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
There's the usual list of substitutes for professional and support staff recommended for your approval.
So motion made by Mr. Hill, second by Mrs. Scher. Questions or comments for item 5? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it.
And on item 896, you will find a recommendation to approve the addition to extracurricular duties for the current school year.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Mrs. Mangle.
Second.
Second by Mr. Mosey. Question on item number 6, which is also listed as item number 896.
One question. Is this budget, are these extra duty payments budgeted?
Yes, they are.
They're not coming out of the general fund?
They're coming out of the general fund, that's correct.
Thank you, sir.
Out of 3,200 series.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Ayes have it.
There are 2 requests for your approval of student travel, and they're, you're right. That's 2. I recommend that you approve the addition to,
Ken, we're not at other business yet.
Right.
We're not there yet.
Let's do it under other business. Yes. I wasn't sure where we were going to do it either, but let's do it under other business.
I make a motion, we approve item E1 and 2.
So moved. Okay, motion made by Mr. Hill, second by Mr. Schilling. On items E1 and item E2, correct?
Yes, sir.
Questions or comments? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it.
and I will remind you there's a report on vandalism among your materials.
Move to accept the report.
Second.
Motion made to accept the report.
Does it have to be a motion?
I don't
We
know.
got it? No.
I don't remember.
It's information.
It's information.
It's information.
I remove my motion.
Thank you.
I remove my second.
Thank you.
Appreciate the effort.
Okay, we'll move on to item number 5, other business. You want to do that now?
Yes.
Okay.
Under other business, Mr. President, members of the board, addressing the topic that was the subject of the earlier executive session. And for our guests, informing you that this has to do with 4 contracts for administrators, 3-year contracts that expire on June 30th. The board will consider that the contracts of Art Wood, Ken Weir, Fred Smith, and Dennis Kelly will not be renewed and will expire by their terms on June 30, 1996. The employment of each of these 4 individuals is to be continued for an indefinite period of time upon the expiration of these contracts, subject to the protections of the Pennsylvania School Code, and all applicable law. It's a recommendation brought to your attention with a request that you approve this recommendation.
Okay, the recommendation from the superintendent, there's been a motion made by Mrs. Mingle.
Second.
The motion is seconded by Mr. Allen. Questions or comments on the motion?
No.
Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Moving on to other business. I'll turn that one, do you want to recommend that one, Mrs. Scher?
That's fine. Actually, it doesn't require a vote. We could just give direction to Dennis to do this. I think, Mr. Ruse, this doesn't require one, but I'll put it out. I recommend approval for Dennis to prepare a request for proposal and plan to seek proposals for bond counsel and financial advisory services to be brought forward to the board at a future time.
Okay, motion's been made by Mrs. Scher and seconded by Mrs. Mingle. Questions or comments on the motion?
In what period of time do you wish board members to provide you with recommendations for who to send RFPs to?
I would like it by the middle of next week, if possible.
That's fair warning.
The bond council one I have finished, and I'll send them both to you when I get the financial services done.
Sure.
Put them both together.
Good.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Any other business?
One question, if I may, Mr. President. We got a copy of a memo here to Dr. Bose from Mrs. Clark and Mrs. Mangano. At the bottom, we were talking about, it's a letter dated December 19th. Recommendation, the above activities require additional administrative support in the absence of supervisor gifted education. Fee is mentioned 5 days for $250, which came to $1,250. Was this part of that additional $2,500 you had mentioned to me?
That's right.
All right, now, we're just going to keep the $1,250 in a fund there in case we need it, is that?
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Out of the current budget.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, any other questions or comments for other business? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to item number 6, Treasurer's Report. Mr. Kelly.
We had cash receipts for the month of December 1995 in the amount of $2,964,272.94. Receipts year-to-date, $85,104,107.16. Disbursements for the month, $8,852,704.82. Disbursements year-to-date, $49,451,108.44. Total investments as of December 31st, 1995, $44,319,144.77.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Any questions or comments of Mr. Kelly on the Treasurer's Report?
Only to mention, I think it might be a good time, Dennis, to let them know that there may be an additional column being added to that Treasurer's Report so that the amount expended as
It
well as
won't be
the
an additional
encumbered-
column, Mrs. Sharp. What it will do, it'll take the combination of the encumbered column and the
So in-
year-to-date spent, and it will give a clearer picture of what percentage of that budget will be expended.
In other words, right now, you'll see that it covers what we've spent to date, but yet encumbered funds are in fact committed funds. And so if you see 24% now, that's only really what we've actually written the checks for, where it might be best if when we take a look at this, we see exactly how much of what percentage is actually committed at this point in time.
Right.
And I think that gives you a more honest picture of where you're standing with
Well, it gives you
fund
the
balance.
dollar figure and what the balance, the dollar figure that's left. But we're going to try to arrange it so that the percentage shows the same thing.
Reflects that, rather than you having to add the two
Yeah,
columns
that's
to
a
see
good
where you're
point,
really standing.
because, I'd like to see if the percentages are low, and then all of a sudden, the last couple of months of the budget year, to see if we have an increased amount spending, if those percentages jump.
Absolutely.
That's very good.
Well-
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Any other questions or comments? Good point. Okay, thank you, Mr. Kelly. We'll move on to the sanction and approval of invoices for the general fund.
I recommend approval of the sanction checks for the month of December in the amount of $8,868,831.61, and approval of the disbursements for the month of January in the amount of $336,973.41.
So moved.
Motion made by Mr. Mosey. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Schilling. Questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it. Moving on to the food service report.
For the month of December, we had total income of $231,891.13. Raw food costs in the amount of $114,781.03, which gave us a gross profit on sales of $117,110.10. Total operating costs for the month of $133,642.90, which gave us for the month a net loss of $16,532.80, which brought our profit to date for the year down to $58,797.86. What I'd like to inform the board is, during the month of December, we had, as you know, the 5-day winter holiday, plus we had 3 snow days. I think it's important to look back to the November and see that on a daily basis in November, we were collecting $13,445 a day. And actually in December, we were collecting $13,510 a day. So we actually went up due to some promotions that Mrs. Urban was running. But due to the snow days, that's where we took our loss. And I'll be reporting back in January with the week we had off. With another loss. But she assures me February we will make it up.
It's a Valentine's Day.
Is that correct, Mrs. Irwin? Thank you.
You don't start running this business right now.
Thank you, Dennis. Any questions or comments for Dennis on the food service report? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to federal programs. Dr. Bose.
No report, Mr. President.
Any questions or comments of Dr. Bose? Hearing none, we'll move on to item 10, long-range planning. Dr. Mangano.
I was doing things in a hurry.
Oh, this meeting went so quickly, you weren't ready, right?
Someone needs to make coffee. What, the coffee? It's like I got stuck with decaf. Somebody stiffed me with decaf. You really?
She fell asleep, yeah.
I haven't had good
Let's get out of here. You don't know. It's really. Is it
I'd like to begin by giving you an update as you directed me, and as I think it's very important to make sure that the board and the community are in target and in sync with what is happening with the strategic planning. Long-range planning is a term that we're going to be using. Point of clarification for everyone, Chapter 5, the state has affirmed, and we do have a fax from the Secretary of Education's office that we are in fact required to submit the report to the state by September 30th, 1996. There are no extensions for Phase 3 schools. Extensions were given for Phase 1 and for Phase 2 schools up to the date of September 30th, 1996. Since we're a Phase 3 school, that is our target date. I'd also like to reaffirm for you in that first statement that the administration at the Department of Education is very firm in trying to develop a system of rigorous academic performance standards as opposed to outcome-based education, which has been a term which we have heard consistently. I think what we will be hearing more is the term rigorous academic performance standards. The process for us has begun. We have a steering committee which has met and reviewed the current process, the timeline, and the committee composition. The composition of the planning committee is attached to the document along with the revised timelines that you see. Everybody on this list has either spoken to me or spoken to my secretary or to Dr. Bose and has agreed to serve on the planning team for the long-range planning process. That team will begin January 29th, 30th, and 31st. We will be working from 8 to 4 here in this building, and we will be looking at the district's current vision, mission, and goals, identifying the strengths and the weaknesses. There will be data books that will be provided for every planning team, committee member, and items in that collection will include the items that I've identified here. There also will be a parallel between those divisions in the data books and the planning teams. However, the planning committee may decide other teams be very important to create. The planning teams will be formed the first week of February. You're probably very well aware of the bulletin that went out. I believe it was at the last meeting that was a bulletin to the press and also to the school and the community that they could in fact then volunteer to serve on the planning teams. I'm happy to say in 2 days we've received a number of people who have agreed to do that. Items for clarification: the Phase 3 schools with the plan submission by 9/30/1996 is followed by a mid-cycle report and a summary report. This was a question that Donna and Tom had talked about. We discussed at the steering committee meeting, and Dr. Sharedo, conveniently, who is the person who does all of the evaluating of our documents, came to our school today and was able to give us the answer to that. And he said that there is a mid-cycle reporting system, and the dates are there every 2 years. However, his strong recommendation was that the school districts on an annual basis bring back the planning committee to monitor, review, and amend the document appropriately and prepare a status report on a yearly basis to be given to the board and given to the community. That way the monitoring is effective. The final document, which will be prepared, will have both a technical and a qualitative review by the regional director and the Division of School-Based Improvement and the Bureau of Curriculum and Academic Services. This will be a 5-member team. It will include 1 teacher, 1 parent, 1 administrator or community member, and 2 members from the Department of Education. There will be a written and face-to-face meetings and recommendations to determine whether our plan will be approved by the state. We've got everything ready to go. The documents will always be in my office for any of you to look at should you choose to. And we're excited about getting everything ready on January 29th as a startup. Any questions for me?
No questions?
No.
Great report.
Great report. There'll probably be questions later.
I'm sure. There should be.
Thank you, Sandy.
That's right.
Okay, we'll move on to item 11, our solicitor's report.
Thank you. Unfortunately, because of the last-minute scheduling change, Mr. Potash was unavailable to be here tonight due to prior commitment. I am pleased to report on behalf of our office that the petition which Mr. Robinson referenced earlier in the meeting has, against the school district and individual board members, has in fact been dismissed by the court. And that action is now concluded.
Who was the deciding judge on that, please?
I
Solicitor.
actually don't recall. I can find that information out for you. It was a copy of the order was sent to Mr. Weir, Mr. Clemens, but I can also find that out too.
No big deal.
Thank you. Motion made to adjourn?
Motion made to adjourn by Mrs. Sheriff, second by Mr. Hill. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All right, okay.